Hi everyone, I'm Michael.
And I'm Patrick, and you're watching another episode of Star Wars News and Views podcast. Today we'll be discussing The Last Jedi, Star Wars Episode 8. After just having seen it, I guess both Mike and I just finally saw it together, and we got a chance to talk about it now.
Yeah. My journey to see this film, it was the day of the first snowstorm of the year was the day I saw it. And I had to walk to the theater, which is 10.4 kilometers from my house.
Oh my god.
In the snow with canvas shoes that were soaked like straight through within 10 minutes. So I walked 20.8 kilometers there and back to see The Last Jedi. So I earned that ticket.
That's some dedication.
Yeah.
So, I guess I'll start it off with, I really liked it. I had a great time seeing that movie, and after I went out of the theater, I had like a huge smile on my face and was like super excited by it. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I thought it was really, really good. I know there's some sort of split feelings on it within the fan base, but I thought it was fantastic. I really appreciated the fact that it didn't go the conventional route. There was just so many things I liked about it that really surprised me, and not that it was perfect or anything. I do have some issues with it.
Overall, I liked it more than Episode 7, like, for sure. It definitely seemed a bit more, like, not as hopeful, I guess, and it wasn't as, like, you know, like, wistful, and, like, everything was, like, worked out really well, and, like,
yeah.
It seemed to be, like, really, like, hard for the characters. Like, nothing was, like, good for any of them at pretty much at any time. And yeah, like you said, I did like a lot of the surprises that happened in the movie. Sort of like, you know, there was a decent amount of twists going on, and like plot twists that happened that I didn't really expect, which I liked a lot. And overall, I liked all the main characters a lot in that movie. Like, I think that like Rey and Kylo Ren were both phenomenal. That was like,
I love the relationship that they built between Rey and Kylo Ren.
When I saw like Luke talk to Yoda again, I was like almost in tears.
And it was Puppy Yoda.
I know, right? That's why I was like, I just saw it. It also like just reminded me so much more of Yoda in the original trilogy, where he's like bonking him on the head and like, you know, like being a lot more like funny and stuff than like the Yoda we see in the prequels, who is cool, but overall seemed a little more boring to me than the one in the original trilogy. I
really liked all the stuff they did with the Force. They brought it back to this kind of mystical, awe-inspiring power that you don't even know what it's possible to do with the Force.
Right, yeah. And even in like Episode 7, the only new thing you get to see that it does is like Kylo Ren being able to read someone's mind at some level.
Yeah.
That was really the only new thing that happened in that one. But in this one, they can like project to each other and like talk to each other through the Force, and like, you know, they brought back the sort of like journey that Rey went on, that Luke kind of went on when he went through the tree or whatever, and this time she saw like a bunch of like reflections of herself.
Yeah.
Which was cool.
Yeah, all that weird stuff with the Force, like them, Kylo Ren and Rey talking to each other through the Force. I think those were probably that and of course the throne room scene were like my two favorite parts of it.
Yeah. Okay, well, the throne room scene was probably one of the best scenes in the whole series for me. For
yeah,
sure. That was
I would say I would agree with that. I was like when they kind of team up there for a minute, I was like losing it.
Yeah, well, first when he killed Snoke, I was like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't expect it at all, and then like they start going nuts and killing all the Imperial guards or whatever, and
the Praetorian guards, yeah.
Yeah, and then when Rey throws the lightsaber to Kylo Ren, he catches it and turns it on the guy's head. It was like, oh, it was so brutal.
Yeah, I had been warned that the movie felt really long because I saw it after opening weekend. But to be honest, it didn't feel long to me.
Yeah, no, for sure. For me too. I was like, I definitely don't think it felt too long for me. I was kind of like, you know, I even expected it to end a bit earlier too, because that throne room scene was essentially the climax of the movie. It is the climax of the movie. It just happens a lot earlier on than most of the time.
But then there's the second climax on Crate with Luke and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. But I feel like that was like more of the climactic, like full on, you know, like plot twist and like everything gets revealed. And the one with Luke at the end was like, it was an important part. And it was like a cool like moment, but I don't think it was like the climax of the movie where a lot of like dynamic changes immediately. It's just kind of like, you know, another like Hail Mary set of play where it, like he saves everybody. It was still a climactic part too, but I don't know. I feel like that was like the main climax for me for the movie, and it happened like earlier on.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Luke in this film, because a lot of fans have disagreed with the portrayal of him and don't like it. Some people think it's really interesting and brings a lot more depth.
Yeah.
What did you think of that?
Well, so, like, I guess you know, I kind of feel when I walked into the movie, I'm like, I kind of felt bad. I'm like, oh man, like Luke's dead now. And it kind of just sucks that that's kind of like the way he went, like, you know, at the hand of his like apprentice essentially who turned evil, and he didn't really have like a chance to do anything to like redeem him or anything, and he just kind of like gave himself up. But then I kind of thought about it a bit more, and I was like, well, I mean, to be honest, like he became a Jedi Master and was able to do something that I don't think anyone else has done, is like project himself into this battle far away on a planet like forever, you know, and be able to like to hold him off and like, you know, create this illusion, and then he ended up saving the entire like Rebel Alliance, right? Like who would have been wiped out otherwise had he not done it. So I was like, well, I guess to be honest, like he did, you know, pretty much as good a job as he could have done, save for having gone up and like fought Kylo Ren. But then like, you know, anyways, so his like death moment I kind of am okay with, and also, you know, it kind of gave him the like peaceful way of dying, kind of like Yoda and Obi-Wan, where instead he like fades away. Oh, I guess Obi-Wan was struck down with a lightsaber, but you know, like fading into the Force kind of idea, which means that we'll probably see him again in Episode 9 as the Force Ghost.
Yeah, I have a feeling. Well, what about his portrayal as sort of, you know, being done with the Jedi and wanting the Jedi to end, and kind of, he says at one point, I came here to die, like when he's on Ahch-To.
Yeah, so he kind of became hopeless. Like, I mean, I guess I understand why people, you know, don't want to see him that way, being that in episodes
like a broken Luke.
Yeah, because seeing in episodes 4 to 6, he was like, you know, like always seemed to like have hope and wanting to like, you know, come back, and everyone kind of assumed he was this legend. But I kind of like that though, because otherwise, if you don't give him any flaws in this trilogy, then like why couldn't Luke have just done everything from the beginning, and why would there be any sort of conflict at all, right? Like, he has to have some limitations at some point. At any point in the story, he has to be limited in some way. Whether it be his, like, you know, him getting old and not being able to fight or yada yada, like, he's going to have to do something wrong. Otherwise, the trilogy just can't happen, right? Like, there can't be any more conflict in the universe.
Yeah.
So, I kind of like that in the sense that he was flawed. He was also able to, like, teach Rey through his failure, which is kind of a big motif of the movie, right? Which is what Yoda is saying.
And Yoda
like,
says that, yeah.
Right, yeah, and he's like, you know, this is how you teach, is like, by failing, it's also like the best lesson.
There's a lot of like, I want to say like samurai film influence, or even like maybe like an anime influence.
But yeah, so that part was like, if anything, I don't think that, you know, people were complaining of his characterization. I don't think the fact that he went into hiding after all that stuff happened was necessarily a bad thing, because
well, even Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi do that, right? They give up and go into hiding in A New Hope.
Yeah, and like I can see why after, you know, his nephew, his like best friend and his sister's son, he raised to become a Jedi, ended up turning evil. Like, I can understand why after seeing that happening, and like, you know, seeing the dark side turn his father as well.
And his school gets wiped out too.
Yeah, like he must have felt like so defeated that like it was the only thing he could do, right? Like, I don't know, like I understand that part of him. I feel like the contemplating killing Kylo Ren was kind of a bit, like, maybe a bit more of a stretch, if anything. Mm-hmm. But I can understand why they did it as sort of like a tension in the movie.
Yeah, well, it's like, you know, they say, you know, the dark side comes from a place of fear, and in that moment Luke was afraid, and he had a dark thought, and then he kind of calmed himself and it passed, right?
Yeah. And like, if anything, that just makes him more human. Like, you know, he should have some flaws. He can't just be this like angel of a character, right?
Yeah, well, I think like, because fans, you know, kind of idealize Luke, and even Mark Hamill, in a way, he looks at the character from the perspective of a fan, of like this heroic icon of virtue and whatever. And the reality is that, you know, it's more interesting when it's more complicated than that. And that in order to create drama, you have to challenge these characters and put them into tough places. Yeah, with regards to the end of Luke, the sort of final showdown, I know, like I was saying, sort of like fan expectation. In their heads, fans have this idea of like Luke being heroic and being, you know, brought back to the fold, and then coming back and having a big showdown. And even Luke says in the film, like, what did you expect? I was gonna go down there and like have a huge showdown with the entire First Order? It's like, it's not gonna happen like that.
Yeah, like, it's impossible for him to take on everybody, right?
And
like,
the way he did it was by actually not doing that, by just projecting himself through the Force in a symbolic act. And I think everyone had this sort of like this wet dream of like Luke coming back and having like a Dragon Ball Z style battle where he's like, you know, crushing all the AT-ATs and just like showing how powerful he is. But in fact, he did show how powerful he is, because I can't think of a more fitting end for Luke, where he's just meditating to project himself through the Force to impart a lesson.
Yeah.
Like, that's wisdom. It's not about him coming in there with with the green lightsaber and he has this big showdown and he's, you know, throwing around ships and stuff like that. That's the video game moment. That's not, I think, true to the sort of philosophy and ethos of Star Wars and the Force and all that.
Right, and like to think about it, like no one's shown them being like themselves being that powerful. Where if all those things shot at him, like happened to his projection, that he'd able to be able to survive any of that. Like there's no way. Like come on, I don't think that's like blasters, but like he would definitely have died no matter what, even if he was as powerful as everyone wanted him to be. Like I don't think he could live through all that. And otherwise, like they would just be completely overpowered in this universe and just be these like gods essentially, right? And it was kind of cool actually. I liked it because I noticed that at some point when I was watching it in theaters that he looked younger and his beard was like not gray anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, whoa, that's cool. And then I was like, oh yeah, it makes so much sense now. It's a projection, right? Yeah.
It's like the idealized version of Luke.
Was the last? I think that was the last time that like Kylo Ren had saw him. That's how he looked even. Right?
That was the last time he was part of the Jedi.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I guess like that's all. Most of that stuff are the things that I really liked about the movie. Some of the stuff that I guess I didn't like were some of the like I found the humor funny, and Star Wars always had the humorous moments, but I guess it kind of seemed a lot more like a Marvel like blockbuster kind of humor, which I don't think was bad, because in the movie I definitely enjoyed it, and I definitely enjoyed a lot of the jokes and stuff like that happened, but it kind of like seemed a little bit less like the old trilogy. That's not necessarily a bad thing though, because it is supposed to be a new series altogether, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought some of the dialogue was kind of crap. And I think like Force Awakens had Lawrence Kasdan writing it, and he's much better at like being, I guess, witty and clever, whereas this one was a little bit more jokey, I guess. Yeah.
I like Poe Dameron a lot in this movie. I thought his character arc was probably like my next favorite after the like main sort of the Kylo Ren and Rey one.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot because it kind of subverted a lot of expectations about like him being this like flyboy and going in and saving everything, and it's like, yeah, how many times are you gonna have this like guy who just comes in and he just completely disregards the rules and ends up coming out like alive and winning and stuff, and they kind of just said like, nope, this time it's not gonna happen and he's gonna make a mistake, and it was really punishing, right?
Yeah. I kind of wished what's her name, Laura Dern's character, Admiral Holdo, I think her name is.
Yeah.
I wish she had been more of a hard ass, like really like tough as nails, because at the end, like after the mutiny's over, they kind of played her like really soft. I felt like that was a mistake.
Yeah, I kind of liked the dynamic there though, where like she is, she's technically correct about this stuff, but she's actually a bad leader in the sense that like she obviously didn't do a very good job of portraying this to her crew or to like Poe, and that's kind of one of her flaws, is that she wasn't like very charismatic, which is what Poe is. But he's also a very bad tactical leader, because you saw him like doing really risky stuff, getting his crew killed and everything. So it kind of like was a bit of a dynamic for both. And Poe, having now failed, ends up learning from that failure and changes at the end of the movie, which is another one of the themes that Yoda was talking about.
I think the other main problem I have, and this is something that most people say, is that the whole sequence on Canto Bight, I think it's called, or Canto Bright, whatever, the casino planet Vegas.
Yeah.
I felt that largely didn't work. Like it went on too long, and it kind of like, I guess in and of itself, it wasn't bad. It's just that it keeps cutting away from Rey and Luke, and that's what you're interested in.
I feel like they should have kind of just done that whole part in one sequence as opposed to cutting back and forth, because it would have just been, I don't know, it kind of was a little bit out of nowhere in general anyways, but
I also didn't really I didn't really care much for the character of Rose, to be honest. I felt she was like too sweet, I guess. It didn't feel real. Benicio del Toro's character did nothing for me. He's kind of just there, and then they get caught, so he decides to betray them, and then he just kind of vanishes.
I kind of liked them though. I mean, I don't mind them throwing in like random like new characters that have some kind of like new cool look and like.
I didn't have a problem with the character itself. I just felt like it didn't have a payoff.
Right. Yeah.
It felt like they're saving him for something else, and that'll be the payoff. Like you haven't seen the last of him, but I was like, I don't know. It seemed a little the whole Finn and Rose subplot didn't really do much for me, to be honest. Okay, so I guess last little thing is, what did you think of like the revelations? I guess Snoke, because everyone, who is Snoke? And then it's like, it doesn't matter, he's dead. And then Rey finding out, oh, your parents are no one.
Well, so then her parents being no one, I definitely think that you and I called.
Yeah, we called it. And same with Snoke too. It's like, it doesn't matter where he comes from. Like, no one in the film is asking who is Snoke. Like, you know, Han and Rey are not like, who is Snoke? Where does he come from? Why is he strong on the dark side? Like, Luke doesn't ask that. Leia doesn't ask that. So it doesn't even matter, really. I'm sure the expanded universe will flesh that out, because, like, no one asks where the Emperor came from in the original films, right?
Right, exactly. And I feel like, you know, the Snoke's whole purpose was that he just, like, seduced Kylo Ren to the dark side. But the dark side is within everybody in the first place anyways, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's, like, something that anyone can tap into, or, you know, eventually. And Snoke was just, like, someone who kind of, like, you know, persuaded him a bit. But it doesn't mean that he's necessarily, like, strong with the Force, or has to be some crazy, like, you know, character that whatever. It's just, like, that's all he did. He, like, you know, made Kylo Ren see things a bit differently. And that's what ended up making, like, the big villain of this trilogy, which is Kylo Ren, right?
Yeah, and I love the way they subverted, like, and that, like, it's never been done before, where halfway through the second film, the apprentice just murders the master and is like, now I'm the new Supreme Leader.
Right,
so going into Episode 9, we'll have Supreme Leader Kylo Ren.
Yeah, which I think is super cool, because he's probably my favorite, or one of my favorite villains in the series now.
Yeah, and now for sure, you know Episode 9 will not play out the way Return of the Jedi does.
And, like, I think that one of the good things, too, about the way Kylo Ren is going about this is that, like, you know, he kind of idealized Darth Vader in the first place, right? That's kind of where, I guess, Snoke ended up persuading him. But now he's, like, even surpassing Darth Vader and what Darth Vader did.
Do they ever show the Darth Vader map? I don't think they do, right? What?
Not in this movie, yeah. I wonder what happened to it. I guess he left it in that, like, pile of dirt he had it in.
The other thing I was wondering about that they don't really address, though, is the Knights of Ren. What happened to them?
Yeah, they still apparently exist. Like, Snoke didn't talk about them in the past when he was talking about them. Like, they still are supposed to be there, right?
Well, someone, a viewer of ours, I was talking with him the other day, Jason, and he said, like, the Snoke's Praetorian Guards, are those the Knights of Ren?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see that.
They may not go that way, but, like, that would be interesting. They're all dead now, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's another thing. So we were talking a bit about, like, earlier we were talking about Rian Johnson's, like, vision of who Rey's parents are, and he said that like, you know, J.J. Abrams and Daisy Ridley might have had a different idea of who the parentage was. And I guess they can still go around and change her parentage in the next movie. I hope they don't, because I think that'd be really weak.
They can
change. It's possible.
Yeah, they can change who Snoke was, and they can say Kylo Ren was lying to manipulate her.
Although Rian Johnson went on like in an interview and said that he wasn't lying, at least in that moment. He believed that was true. I believe
that Kylo Ren was being sincere. He seemed very sincere.
Well, he has no reason to lie to Rey, because I think that, like, you know, he's not trying to deceive her in any way. He just wants her to see things the way he sees them, and, like, you know, be with him on this journey.
Yeah, and one of the things I really liked about Rey and Kylo Ren's relationship is that it did seem very genuine, and also that these are two people that no one really understands them, but they kind of get each other on some way.
Yeah, because they're the same age and they can both, like, use the Force.
Yeah, and, like, even when, like, she's in the elevator with him, like, she's like, you don't have to, like, you can come with me. It's okay. Like, I can help you. Like, she has this innate desire to help people. And at the end, in the throne room scene, after all is said and done, Snoke's dead, the guards are all dead, and he says, like, you know, will you come with me? And he's like, please, come with me. Like, you can see in his eyes, he's very emotional about it. That scene is, like, so, like, it's probably better than any scene in Force Awakens, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
To me, at least. Like, just, like, them teaming up and, like, they're fighting back to back, and then after, like, the shocker of him cutting Snoke in half.
Yeah.
And the place is, like, literally going up in flames, and then, yeah, it's just, like, that whole scene was just, like, I was just, like, glued to the screen the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need it.
Sorry to cut you off there, but
yeah.
This is like people complaining that the film kind of went in unexpected directions. I like that, because when Kylo Ren is, like, offers his hand and is like, please come with me, like, part of me kind of wanted Rey to accept it just to see what would happen. Like how interesting would that be? Okay, so that's our thoughts, you know, sort of first-ish impressions of seeing the film. We've had a couple days to digest it. I think we both loved it. Yeah, it's just really good. I know some fans are a bit divided on it. We'll talk more about that. We're going to be doing a separate discussion about sort of fan expectation, and there's kind of a backlash against that, and I think there's discussion to be had there. So we're going to be specifically focusing on that in our next video. But just because we're really late with this, so we just wanted to give you full, we're only scratching the surface here. We've gone on longer than we thought, but we could really triple the length of this video as it is. But I think we'll maybe come back a little bit later this month and do sort of a focusing on some specific aspects maybe.
Yeah, and after having thought more about specific things and seeing the movie another time, which I know I'm going to do. I'm definitely going to see it again. Maybe I'll have some different opinions on stuff.
I think also, for some fans that may not know how they feel about this, I think it is a film that takes more time to digest. There's more in it, and there's more layers than there was in a film like Force Awakens, where it hit all the right notes, and it was not that it was surface level or whatever, but it was much more of a popcorn movie. And this was much more like Empire Strikes Back. It's like Rian Johnson had to make a film that philosophically took the same approach to Empire Strikes Back without actually remaking Empire Strikes Back. And so he took a more complex philosophical approach that goes against the grain and doesn't do what the fans were necessarily expecting. And I think, personally, for that makes it all the more interesting.
I agree, and you can see in this movie there's a lot more character growth for every character essentially in the series than just being one note, sort of one-dimensional characters, which we got a lot in Star Wars in general as it is. But it was really good to see the main cast especially be fleshed out and have growing experiences and having a major theme in the movie. I felt, which kind of makes you, the more times you watch it, the more you can see aspects of their characters change throughout the movie.
And it makes me really, really curious about what J.J. Abrams is going to do, because he made his pitch to Bob Iger for Episode 9 the weekend Last Jedi came out. So he has the story. He may tweak things a little bit in reaction to The Last Jedi. I hope not. I hope, I think this is way more complex and interesting than what JJ could have come up with for Episode 8. And I don't think it was exactly what he had in mind for Episode 8. But I think it's now sort of forced the trajectory down a certain angle, a certain direction, that I think is going to give us something really interesting to Episode 9.
I agree, and I definitely didn't want to just see this whole trilogy just be a rehash of every same character trope from the original trilogy. And I'm really glad this movie shook it up a lot, because that was a fair criticism. Episode 7 I found was that it was too similar, and I think that this movie really did a good job of changing that huge criticism of it. And now, of course, the backlash is, it's not a Star Wars movie anymore. And it's come on.
What do you want, man? I really, at this point, I kind of had ideas how the arc of Episode 8 and 9 might play out. I have no idea what they're going to do now.
Yeah, I really didn't expect Snoke to die and Kylo Ren to take over. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
It's left us with the main villain of the series being somebody that we still relate to and don't really want to see fail.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
That I don't think that's ever happened.
So anyway, guys, leave your comments below. I'm sure you guys have very strong opinions, as all Star Wars fans do. Keep in mind, these are just our opinions. These are our personal views. If you didn't like it, I respect that. That's fine. I don't agree with it, but whatever. It's your opinion. These are our opinions. And it makes for interesting discussion to, share them civilly, and have that back and forth.
And hey, at least there was no Ewoks in this one, right?
Yep. Well, that's what the third film's for. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next episode.